Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum class. My name is Osama Farooq and my roll number is MSF 20227. I am currently enrolled in MS Chemistry program in University of Education Lahore. Our course is about X-ray diffraction techniques, having course code Chem 5134. This is the third chapter of this course, which is about single crystal X-ray diffraction, and I am going to discuss the fifth lecture from that chapter. In this lecture, we will primarily focus on neutron diffraction in detail. So what is neutron diffraction? It is a method by which neutrons are used to determine the atomic and magnetic structures of a material. We can also use it to study crystalline solid, gases, liquids, or amorphous materials. Here we can see a small box which contains the basic information about neutrons. Mass of neutron is 1.67 multiplied by 10 raised to power minus 27 kilogram. Its charge is neutral, that is 0. Its spin is half, positive half, or clockwise. Magnetic moment of neutron is 1.91 mu and the mean lifetime is 15 minutes. This slide is a simple representation of neutron diffraction. Here a neutron beam strikes a sample, which may be a crystalline material or any other material. After striking the sample, the neutron beam is refracted at point C at a certain angle 2 theta, which it makes with the neutron beams that go undifracted, or you can say they go straight from the material. At point 3 there is a detector which detects the neutron beam and gives our final results. In this slide we will go through a bit of history about neutron scattering. Neutron was first discovered by J. Chadwick in 1932. The idea of neutron scattering by crystalline materials was proposed by W. Althusser in 1936. In the same year, F. Bloch predicted the feasibility of neutron scattering by magnetic moment in condensed materials. High-flux neutron reactor sources were built in 1940s and 1950s in US and Canada. In 1994, Nobel Prize was awarded to two scientists for their pioneering contributions to the development of neutron scattering techniques for studies of condensed matter. The first scientist that was awarded Nobel Prize was Bertram N. Brookhouse for the development of neutron spectroscopy. The second person to gain the Nobel Prize in 1994 was Clifford G. Scholl for the development of neutron technique. As neutron particles are neutral, they scatter exclusively from the nucleus rather than the electrons, and that type of scattering is due to the nuclear forces. Neutron diffraction is an important technique to reveal the internal structure of a crystal, and it has the potential for providing information which the techniques like XRD and electron cannot reveal. Here is a diagrammatic representation of neutron scattering. Here you can see a neutron source which produces a white beam of incident radiation which strikes at monochromator. The monochromator releases a monochromatic wavelength of neutrons which strikes at monitor. The monitor guides it to the sample. There are two possibilities when the neutrons strike at sample. The first is that it will go straight and a beam stopper is used to stop it. And the other is that the neutron beam will be diffracted at an angle of 2 theta to analyzer which guides it to the detector from where we get our final result. A question might have popped up in our minds that why we are using neutrons in diffraction analysis. Following are the points which will tell us why we use neutrons in our diffraction experiments. The first point is that the wavelength of neutrons is comparable with that of the interatomic spacing of crystals and similar structures. The second point is that the kinetic energy of neutrons is comparable with that of atoms in a solid. As neutrons are very penetrative, so this property of neutrons helps in the measurement of bulk properties. The neutrons interact weakly with matter, and that aids in the interpretation of scattering data. As neutrons are precursors of isotopy, the isotopic sensitivity allows the contrast variation in neutron diffraction techniques. Neutron magnetic moment couples to B, that is, neutron sees unpaired electron spins. In the next few slides, we are going to explain the neutron diffraction technique. Neutron diffraction is a very expensive technique, and a nuclear reactor is needed in order to get a sufficiently intense source of neutrons. There are very few laboratories that have their own neutron facility, and instead their experiments are being carried out at central laboratories which provide a user service. For example, at the IL Grenoble, France, the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory, UK, and the Argonne Laboratory, USA. Despite the high cost of neutron diffraction, it is still considered a valuable technique because it can provide information, especially on magnetic materials, which otherwise is not achievable with other techniques. If alternative techniques such as XRD can solve a particular problem, we won't use neutron diffraction technique, as it is a expensive technique. As neutron beams are usually of low intensity, therefore the sample size required for diffraction experiments is relatively large. It should be at least of 1 cubic millimeter. Since crystals of this size are often not available, crystallographic studies are usually carried out on polycrystalline samples. A photoneutron diffraction pattern looks pretty much like an X-ray diffraction pattern, but there are several characteristic differences between neutron and X-ray diffraction. Firstly, the neutrons that are obtained from a nuclear reactor gives a continuous spectrum of radiation without the intense characteristic peaks that are present in an X-ray diffraction spectra. The neutrons that are used for diffraction are called thermal neutrons. The velocity and wavelength of thermal neutrons are controlled by the temperature inside the nuclear reactor. The wavelengths of thermal neutrons are in the order of 0.5 to 3 angstrom. We use a crystal monochromator to select a particular wavelength in order to have monochromatic neutrons for conventional diffraction experiments. As we use a crystal monochromator which filters a lot of wavelengths and selects only a few, and in doing so most of the available neutron energy is wasted, and therefore the beam that is used is weak and is not particularly monochromatic. This is an X-ray emission spectrum of copper with intensity on y-axis and wavelength in angstrom on x-axis. In the previous slide, we discussed that the X-ray diffraction spectrum has characteristic intense peaks, and here you can see K alpha 1, K alpha 2, K beta. These three are the characteristic intense peaks. These intense peaks are only the characteristic feature of X-ray diffraction analysis, and the neutron diffraction technique has nothing to do with these intense characteristic peaks. A recent exciting advanced technique uses pulsed neutron sources coupled with time of flight analysis. High energy particles such as protons are used as particular accelerators to bombard a heavy metal target to obtain the neutrons. The efficiency of the spallation process, yielding about 30 neutrons per proton, gives a high neutron flux suitable for diffraction experiments. Here we have used the term spallation process. So what is spallation process? Spallation is the process in which a heavy nucleus emits numerous nucleons as a result of being hit by a high energy particle. In that case, that is the proton particle. It greatly reduces the atomic weight. In the time of flight method, the entire neutron spectrum is used with a fixed diffraction angle, that is theta. The neutron wavelengths depend on velocity, given by the de Broglie relation lambda is equal to h over mv, where m is the mass of the neutron, that is 1.675 multiplied by 10 raised to power minus 27 kilogram, and v is the velocity. The diffracted radiation that arrives at the detector is separated according to its time of flight and wavelength. The fundamental law of diffraction is again the Bragg's law, given by n lambda is equal to 2d sine theta. In the time of flight method, lambda and d, which is the interatomic spacing in the crystal lattice atoms, are the variables at a fixed angle theta. This compares with conventional diffraction techniques in which interatomic spacing d and angle theta are the variables at fixed wavelength lambda. The pulsed method gives rapid data collection. It may therefore also be used for studies of short-time phenomena, especially in experiments where samples are subjected to pulsed magnetic fields. The scattering powers of atoms towards neutrons are completely different than those toward X-rays, and this is the second difference between neutron and X-ray diffraction. In case of X-ray diffraction, the scattering power is a simple function of atomic number, and light atoms such as hydrogen diffract X-rays only weakly. While in case of neutrons, the atomic nuclei rather than the extranuclear electrons are responsible for the scattering, and in this case, hydrogen is a strong scatterer of neutrons. In addition, since atomic nuclei are effectively point scatterers of neutron, there is no dependence of neutron scattering power on sine theta by lambda, unlike the case for X-ray scattering. This means that the intensity of powdered neutron diffraction pattern doesn't show the general decrease with increasing bag angle that is evident in the case of powder X-ray diffraction patterns. Neutron scattering power is not simply dependent on atomic number, and there is not such a wide range of scattering powers of neutrons across the periodic table as there is in case for the X-rays. This means that heavy atoms in crystal structure dominate X-ray diffraction patterns and therefore form the basis of methods like Patterson method that is used for the structure determination. But it can create difficulties in structure refinement using XRD data if light atoms are present or atoms of a similar atomic number that cannot be readily distinguished by XRD. Neutron diffraction, on the other hand, is less useful for structure determination because of the absence of particularly strong neutron scatterers. But it is a good method for structure refinement using methods like Rietveld method because almost all atoms contribute significantly to neutron scattering. So we can conclude that Patterson method is used for structure determination by using X-ray diffraction analysis, and Rietveld method is used for structure refinement using neutron diffraction analysis. Additionally, there are some atoms that cause a change of phase by pi or lambda by 2 in the diffracted neutron beams, and there are certain atoms, notably vanadium, that do not diffract neutrons at all. It is owing to that reason that vanadium cans are used as sample holders in diffraction experiments because they are transparent to neutrons. Now our next heading is about crystal structure determination. Neutron diffraction is used for crystallographic works just in cases the techniques like XRD are not applicable. The neutron diffraction analysis is used to locate light atoms, especially hydrogen, in the hydrides, hydrates, and organic structures. The main part of the structure is actually solved by the X-rays methods, and neutron diffraction is used to locate the light atoms within that structure. Neutron diffraction is also used to distinguish atoms that have similar X-ray scattering paths, such as manganese, iron, cobalt, and nickel. The neutron scattering powers of these atoms are different, and for instance superlattice phenomena associated with manganese or iron ordering in alloys. These are readily observed by neutron diffraction. Our next heading is about magnetic structure analysis. The magnetic properties depend on the presence of unpaired electrons, especially in the d or f atomic orbitals. Since neutrons possess a magnetic dipole, they interact with unpaired electrons and consequently are diffracted by both the atomic nuclei and unpaired electrons. This forms the basis of a powerful technique for studying the magnetic structure of materials. A simple example of magnetic structure and order is shown by nickel oxide. By X-ray diffraction analysis, nickel oxide has the FCC rock salt structure. However, when it was examined by neutron diffraction, extra peaks were observed which indicated the presence of a superstructure. The presence of a superstructure arises because the unpaired d electrons in the Eg orbitals are so arranged as to be antiparallel in alternate layers of nickel atoms. Neutrons can detect this ordering of spins, whereas the X-rays cannot detect this ordering of the spins. In our previous slide, we discussed about a superstructure, and this figure is showing a superstructure, an antiferromagnetic superstructure in manganese oxide, iron oxide, and nickel oxide. It is showing a pseudo-cubic unit cell, for which the unit cell dimensions for a supercell are single, as represented as A, and for a subcell, the unit cell dimensions are double, as represented as 2A. However, in this picture, the positions of oxygen atoms are not shown. The unit cell of antiferromagnetic nickel oxide, which is stable below 250 degrees Celsius, has 8 times the volume of paramagnetic nickel oxide, which is stable above 250 degrees Celsius. The structure also shows a slight rhombohedral distortion involving a contraction in the triple one direction perpendicular to the planes of ordered nickel lines. This distortion is very small and it is detected by the splitting of reflections such as triple one and anti-triple one in high resolution neutron powder diffraction patterns. For the present purposes, we will ignore this distortion and create the structure as geometrically cubic. Neutron powder diffraction patterns for manganese oxide, which behaves very similarly to nickel oxide, below and above the Néel temperature represented as Tn, together with the schematic powder X-ray diffraction pattern at room temperature is shown in the next slide in the form of a figure. Comparison of the two patterns above Néel temperature in the next slide shown in figure B and C shows that lines appear in the same positions but are of very different intensities. We will get a better idea in our next slide when we will look at that. In this slide, we have come across a term Néel temperature. What is Néel temperature? Néel temperature describes a temperature limit at which an antiferromagnetic substance becomes a paramagnet. It is called Néel temperature because it was discovered by Louis Néel for the first time. This slide is a schematic representation of neutron and powder X-ray diffraction patterns for manganese oxide having wavelength 1.542 angstrom. The peaks are assigned Miller indices for the cubic unit cells given. There are three figures, namely A, B, and C. The A and B are for neutrons, while the C is for the X-rays. In case of figure A and B, which both use neutron analysis, they have different temperatures, and due to that, they have different intensities and the lines are appearing at different points. While in case of B and C, which are using neutrons and X-rays but have a similar temperature, their lines are appearing at the same point but their intensities are different. This is because of the difference of the techniques that we are using. In case of B, we are using the neutron diffraction technique, while in case of C, we are using the X-ray diffraction technique. The only similarity is the temperature that is similar in both the cases. In the rock salt structure, the condition for reflection is that Miller indices HKL should be either all odd or all even. The first four lines to be expected in the powder pattern are 111, 200, 220 and 311. All four lines appear in both patterns, that is X-ray pattern and neutron pattern. But 200 and 220 are weak in the neutron pattern in figure B, which we have seen in our previous slide. The small intensity of 200 and 220 in figure B is largely because the neutron scattering paths of manganese ion and oxide ion are opposite in sign, although slightly different in magnitude. So partial cancellation therefore occurs for the 200 and 220 reflections, since manganese ion and oxide ions on the same planes scatter out of phase with each other. This is precisely the opposite of the case with scattering of X-rays, for which the scattering factors of all elements have the same sign, and therefore for the 200 and 220 reflections, manganese and oxide ions scatter in phase with each other. This slide is related to slide number 18, which contains figures A, B and C. So in order to get better understanding of this slide, we will have to look at both the slides simultaneously. Comparison of the figures A and B shows that below the Néel temperature, some extra lines appear in the neutron diffraction pattern. The extra lines appear in figure A at 331 degree and 511 degree. These extra lines are associated with the antiferromagnetic superstructure. Although as mentioned above, the true symmetry of the antiferromagnetic structure is rhombohedral. We have discussed that in our previous slides, that the actual true symmetry of the structure is rhombohedral, but we considered it to be cubic, ignoring some factors. So the antiferromagnetic structure is rhombohedral to a first approximation. It can be treated as cubic with cell dimensions that are twice the value for the high temperature paramagnetic structures. That is, in figure A, the value of A is, which is a unit cell dimension, the value of A is 8.85 angstrom at 80 Kelvin, which is below the Néel temperature. Whereas at 293 Kelvin, which is above the Néel temperature, the unit cell dimension A is 4.43 angstrom. So in case of A, it is double the value of unit cell dimension of B, figure B. The volumes of the unit cell are therefore in the ratio of 8:1. The extra lines in the powder pattern of the antiferromagnetic structure may be indexed as shown. Observed reflections are those for which Miller indices HK and L are odd. Note that because the unit cell for A is twice and that for B, the reflections that are common to both have doubled indices in A as compared to those in B. It looks a bit of complicated, but if you look at the diagram, you will get the better idea. For example, reflection 200 in B, which is a very small point in figure B, you can see 200. This is represented as 400 in figure A, which is double the amount. So this explains that point. In this slide, we will discuss about inelastic scattering, soft modes and phase transitions. The slow neutrons possess kinetic energy that is comparable to the thermal energy levels in a solid. These neutrons are inelastically scattered by phonons. Phonons are the vibrational modes in a solid. Information on phonons and interatomic forces is obtained from an analysis of the energy of the scattered neutrons. Further information on electron exchange energy is obtained for magnetic materials. These are spectroscopic techniques using incoherent neutrons. rather than diffraction techniques which use coherently scattered neutrons. But these are mentioned here for the convenience of the readers. Instability of a lattice vibration is believed to be associated with displacive phase transitions. Soft modes, which are a certain type of vibrational modes in low temperature structure, effectively collapses at the critical temperature. In this slide we have discussed the soft modes. So what are the soft modes? Soft modes describe a collective movement of atoms that transform a higher symmetry crystal structure into a lower symmetry crystal structure, as it is evident in the case of critical temperature, above or below which our result is obtained. Soft modes can be studied by infrared and Raman spectroscopy if the vibrations involved are spectroscopically active, and soft modes can also be studied by neutron scattering. In case of neutron scattering, it is a very useful technique because neutron scattering is not limited by the spectroscopic selection rules, which are otherwise applicable in other techniques. In case of neutron scattering, by measuring the inelastic scattering about a number of Bragg reflections, the atomic displacements that are responsible for the soft mode and the phase transition may be determined. For instance, the mechanism of the displacive transition in quartz, that is silicon dioxide at 573 degrees Celsius, has been analyzed by recording the neutron spectra at several temperatures above and below 573 degrees Celsius. Now we have come across term phase transition. So what is phase transition? Phase transition is a change in state from one phase to another. The defining characteristic of a phase transition is the abrupt change in one or more physical properties with change in temperature. We have also come across the term displacive transition. What is displacive transition? Displacive transition comprises of those transitions that only require small collective displacements of individual atoms. Both of these terms are very important in neutron spectral analysis. This slide is about instrumental and sample requirements. We have gone into the details of the instruments required and the samples that are required for the neutron diffraction techniques, and this is the overview of all of our slides that were related to instruments and sample requirements. So we know that for that technique to take place we require a source of neutrons, and neutrons are produced usually in a nuclear reactor, or we use the spallation source, which in that case was protons. Other components that are required include the crystal monochromator as well as filters, which were used to select a desired neutron wavelength. Some part of setup should be movable. That means our apparatus, there should be some points that we can move. At spallation source, the time of flight technique is used to sort the energies of the incident neutrons. So no monochromator is required in some cases. The technique is most commonly performed in the form of powder diffraction, which only requires a polycrystalline powder. Single crystal work is also possible, but the size of the crystal should be larger, in the range of 1 cubic millimeter, and it should be larger as compared to those used in single crystal X-ray crystallography. A beam can be used to perform diffraction experiment. Impinging on a crystalline sample, it will scatter under a limited number of well-defined angles. The word impinging means having some sort of effect, and particularly a negative effect. Neutron diffraction uses Bragg's law the same way as X-ray diffraction does, that is at well-defined angles. Diffractogram is obtained and a plot of a graph of intensity and atomic number showing peaks of different intensities and angles is formed. So what is a diffractogram? A diffractogram is an output from an X-ray diffraction experiment. The output is usually represented in the form of a diffractogram, in which the intensity of diffracted X-rays is shown as a function of the scanning angle 2 theta. In our previous slide, we said that the most common way of using the neutron method is powder diffraction. So the quality of a powder diffractogram usually refers to two things. First, the signal to noise ratio, and second, the resolution. Now you can see a box which is labeled as why neutron scattering is important, and it has 4 points. That is, neutrons have no charge, neutrons have a magnetic moment, neutrons have spin, and neutrons probe nuclei. In our previous slides, we have discussed all of these things in a bit of detail, so we don't need to go through all of them again. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your patience, and in case you have any questions, you can ask me or our respected teacher regarding the neutron diffraction technique. Thanks again.